Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. Welcome to the first edition of the Full 100 for the week. Hope you all had a lovely weekend as well. Weekend wasn't too bad weather-wise. It's Monday, guys, the 28th of September. We're in the last couple of days of September now. Heading for October in a minute. Guys, the last time I spoke with you, I spoke about Trump stealing the elections, how serious that was turning out. I also spoke about the two police shootings, the one in America and the one in Croydon. I'm going to come back to those sometime in the week. What I want to focus on today, guys, is what I've been warning about. Basically, the fallout from, let me put it like this. We're going to deal with, firstly, the fallout from Breonna Taylor's, the grand jury's decision not to indict any of the officers in the Breonna Taylor case, which was diabolical and is a libby, and it's still causing riots. So we're going to touch on that, but we're also going to touch on a developing story right now. It's not really developing for me. I saw it coming months ago and I spoke about it, and that's the situation with Trump and what the world needs to look out for between November, when elections are held, and January, when the transition's done. So guys, without further ado, let's get to today's topic. I'm going to start with the riots. There's been riots in Portland, in Tennessee. Sorry, my bad. There's been riots in Portland, which is Oregon. There's also been riots in Kentucky, which is where Breonna Taylor lives, which is where the whole thing mushroomed from. And there's also been riots in Seattle, in Washington State. Now, what I want to draw to your attention, actually, I'm going to draw your attention to it at the end of this video. So guys, without further ado, take a look at my first video of this show.
You're seeing behind me is pretty much the same thing in terms of what we've seen over the last several months, where you have a group of protesters here downtown. They're in front of the Justice Center, and right now we're not seeing much of a police presence, but earlier in the night we did see some protesters clash with police, protesters throwing different things, and more than a dozen people were arrested. But I have to say, there was a concern that things could have been a lot worse today, when you did have members from the Proud Boys group hold a mass rally. More than 200 people showed up at a local park. The Proud Boys, of course, an extremist group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and said that they're a hate group. These are pro-Trump people, and they showed up with their weapons. They applied for a permit from the city of Portland. They were denied due to COVID-19 concerns, but they came anyway. And as a result of that, you did have several hundred left-leaning protesters, counter-protesters, come to a separate rally. And fortunately, there was no clashes between them. Police really fanned out across the city. They did their best to try to keep those two groups separate.
Authorities say they've arrested at least 7 people after protests turned violent in Seattle Saturday night. Police tweeted photos showing smashed windows and graffiti they blamed on protesters during a march to City Hall. They ordered the crowd to disperse after some in the group began setting fires and throwing rocks and bottles at officers. Recent protests there have been part of a nationwide reaction to the lack of charges in the police-involved shooting death of Breonna Taylor. And a curfew is in effect for Louisville, Kentucky. That's the city where Breonna Taylor was killed. For the 4th night in a row, crowds gathered in the streets on Saturday to demand justice for Taylor, who was killed by police during a botched drug raid in March. Fires were set, buildings were vandalized, and at least 28 people were arrested in Louisville Saturday night. Shimon Prokopez has an update.
That's serious situation going on over there. However, this is what I wanted to draw your attention to. Did you notice that there was counter protests? These right-wing tooled up armed militias continuously coming out, continuously. And Trump's tolerating it. Can I tell you why? The reason is about my next 3 videos, guys. Because I've been warning people to look out for November, when elections are held. This guy is blatantly telling the whole world right now that unless he wins, he's not transitioning power, because he was robbed. This is a guy who Russia robbed the elections for him. This is a guy who won the election even though he had 3 million votes less than Hillary Clinton did. Okay? Now, I'm hoping that the military chiefs in America and all of the states agencies and making contingency plans of how they get a banana dictator out of the seat of power. Because this guy is behaving exactly like every other dictator does.
Election. Responding to a reporter's question, he refused to say if he will accept the will of the American people and commit to a peaceful transition of power if he loses the election. Just take a listen.
Mr. President, real quickly, win, lose, or draw in this election, will you commit here today for a peaceful transferal of power after the election? And there has been rioting in Louisville. There's been rioting in many cities across this country, red and your so-called red and blue states. Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it, and you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else.
And CNN's chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, says President Trump's views on a handover of power is unprecedented.
Not only has no president ever said anything like that, as far as I'm aware, no president has ever thought anything like that. You know, one of the touchstones of American democracy is when the two presidents, the incoming and outgoing president, take the limousine together from the White House to the Capitol for the swearing in, including, you know, the defeated president, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton. They sit there together in the limousine as a symbol of the peaceful transition of power. I don't see any scenario where Donald Trump agrees to participate in that sort of ceremony, even if he loses this election. And I think it's tragic, but revealing about his character and his presidency.
Guys, that's serious. I don't think people understand how serious that is. When a man's telegraphing what he's going to do weeks before he does it, you got your best bet to take it seriously. Okay? Now, the question the journalist was asking him was not, are you going to transition peacefully? It wasn't as simple as that. What he was actually saying to me is, Mr. President, right now, your country is on fire all around you. Right now, people are rioting. Right now, people are angry. Right now, tensions are riding high. Can you promise that you're not going to add to that tension or exploit that tension? He couldn't answer that. So here is my second video on this topic. Take a look.
36 days to the election, just one day until the first presidential debate. But breaking overnight, the man who portrays himself as one of the wealthiest presidents in the nation's history has avoided paying federal income taxes for decades. The New York Times publishing a devastating expose Sunday after obtaining 2 decades worth of tax returns. President Trump has fought relentlessly to keep those returns secret from journalists, prosecutors, and the American public. The story pulls back the curtain to tell a story completely at odds with the public persona Trump worked so hard to create. Instead, the reality is a serial tax avoider who has presided over hundreds of millions of dollars of losses and is crushed by a mountain of debt. Just a sample from this lengthy Times report. The picture that perhaps emerges most starkly from the mountain of figures and tax schedules prepared by Mr. Trump's accountants is of a businessman president in a tightening financial vise. Most of Mr. Trump's core enterprises, from his constellation of golf courses to his conservative magnet hotel in Washington, report losing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars year after year. That hotel and the tax records revealing even more details on the potential conflicts of interest Trump has created by taking money from foreign officials and lobbyists. White House correspondent John Harwood has more on last night's revelations.
On the eve of the first 2020 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, a bombshell report from the New York Times showing that the president, after an extensive review of his tax records, paid only $750 In 2017, his first year as president, in federal income taxes, the same in 2016, the year he was running for president, and more broadly paints a picture of a president in financial distress, increasingly squeezed by the losses at his businesses that are part of the Trump organization, and reliant on his status as president to make money, both from taxpayers through visits to his properties, from having lobbyists and foreign officials come to his hotels to seek access, come to Mar-a-Lago to seek access. This is a president who has portrayed himself as a tremendous business success to the American people and used that argument to say he can turn the country around. This New York Times report, which relies on tax records that it says it got from people with the legal right to possess them, shows a much different picture of this president. Now,
Welcome back, guys. Now is the reasons coming clear. Now, the breaking news from last night was devastating. And I really blame Hillary Clinton because, you see, when he was running in 2006 against Hillary, up to that point, no president, no presidential candidate, someone who's trying to be president, had ever went up without declaring their taxes, without showing their tax returns. This guy skullduggered, he hid, he ducked, he dived, he threatened to sue people that was trying to release it. He did everything to hide it. And the Democrats need to do better this time, because what they should have done was refuse to debate this guy, refuse to even listen to him. The press should have just refused to give him any kind of airtime. No, we're not going to listen to you. When we see your tax returns, we'll listen to you. That's what they should have done. They let him get away with it. So now he's come back to bite him. But it's not just that. It's all of the thieving, the skullduggery, the sexual assault. I mean, this guy has ample reasons not to want to leave power, just like any other dictator, right? This guy, if he knows he's in serious trouble when he leaves power, embezzlement, fraud, sexual assault, he's got it all coming his way. This guy, I said it a few months ago, he's going to be in prison. Now, if you want any more of a motive to hang on to power for as long as you can, that is it. And you know what? His creditors are coming in on him. You can see why he loses money, because he doesn't pay attention to anything. Guys, look, if to me, the Americans should be very, very scared at this point with what's coming their way. So guys, I'm going to scoot over to some more truths now, okay? Now, take a look at this, and we'll come back to the other side to finish off the show. It's my last video of the show. Take a look.
Right, a scathing line from the New York Times report. Mr. Trump has been more successful playing a business mogul than being one in real life. The tax bombshell reveals three things here. The president is adept at losing money, lots of money. The tax system rewards rich people who lose a lot of money. You can write off those losses. The average citizen has paid more to support America's military, roads, schools, and democracy. That's what your federal income taxes do. The American citizen has paid more than he has. Data from Tax Policy Center shows roughly half of Americans pay no income taxes, largely because of how low their income is. But IRS data shows the average filer paid roughly $12,200 in 2017. That's about 16 times more than what President Trump paid the same year. As a candidate, Trump sold Americans on being a successful businessman, but he found multiple ways to write off the cost of creating that image. Trump took huge deductions, including $70,000 to take care of his hair during The Apprentice, and appeared to write off hundreds of thousands of dollars paying his daughter Ivanka as a consultant to the Trump organization.
To the end of the show, guys, but I do want to say a few words. You might watch this show and think, why is he talking about that? What's that got to do with us? Let me explain something. If America goes to war on this election, we get touched. I promise you. Because with the person they got in the White House, he's not going to be going to war on party lines, Democrats against Republicans. This guy is going to war on a race tip. And his followers are going to war on a race tip. You can already see it going on. They're coming out to protest for what? What are they out there protesting for? They just want to be out there in their arms because black people and white allies and fair-minded people are out protesting the Breonna Taylor decision, which was diabolical in itself. You want to charge the person for a stray bullet that goes to a neighbor's house, but you don't charge them for how many bullets that hit a woman in the house who wasn't even a suspect, who was sleeping in a room. You see, we've always got reason to come out. These guys, the only reason they want to come out is to confront black people and people of color and to see if they can shoot as many of them as possible. That's the only reason they come out for. And these guys are already armed to the teeth. So yes, there's a relevance to this story. My channel is about keeping you abreast of world situations, not what's happening in Little London. No, these things are going to affect us. People, dictators, through history, the one reason that they cling on to power and they try to stay in power till they die is because of the repercussions coming their way, because of the stuff they did whilst in power. They do not want to answer for it. They know what's coming their way, and Trump's no different. On Wednesday, guys, we're going to touch on the battle that's going on right now, the Supreme Court battle. I've left it out a little bit a couple of weeks ago when Judge Ginsburg died, the female fabulous judge, when she died. We're going to touch on that on Wednesday so that you see that these things are connected and connected and connected. So guys, I hope the show's been informative. I look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday. Have a fabulous week ahead and have a fantastic Monday. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye now.